When Jane was born. Too bad. She looks just like Karen. Poor kid. Those were the very first words out of my husband Mike's mouth. Such words are unimaginable coming from a parent about their newborn. From the beginning, it seems Mike was only after the money. As I struggled with parenting like it was someone else's problem, he would say, "Taking care of a baby is hard, huh?" And just watch me while drinking his beer. To this day, Mike has shown no interest in parenting. A useless partner who doesn't help with childcare deserves a divorce. And pay up $50,000 in compensation. Mike is laughing loudly with Emma. I've never felt such anger trembling through me before. What does he think children are? I will never hand over Jane to such a man. He can keep running from reality, seeking the easier path, and being spoiled. The world won't bend to your wishes. Sorry to burst your bubble of feeling like you're in heaven, but I'm going to make sure you face your hell. My name is Karen, a 43-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Mike and our daughter born 2 years ago. I met Mike at a friend's wedding reception 3 years ago. I work as a novelist, though modestly. Being introverted due to my profession's solitary nature, I felt somewhat intimidated by the casual atmosphere of the after-party, unlike the formal reception. While I was sneaking out to the exit, "Are you leaving?" That's how Mike, who would later become my husband, approached me. My first impression of Mike was that he seemed surprisingly sincere. It turns out, Mike also couldn't fit into the after-party vibe and was bored. That encounter led us to start communicating, and before we knew it, we were in a relationship. Being with him, I realized Mike seemed a bit naive or detached from worldly matters. One day, "My parents are telling me it's time to be independent since I lived abroad. It's understandable, but I'm still scared. I'm not used to life here yet," Mike said. Mike was younger than me, but already 35 years old, a fully grown adult. Despite having lived abroad, I wondered if he was being too dependent. However, Mike's innocence and cluelessness stirred my maternal instincts enough to invite him to move into my home. And we started living together. My house is built as a duplex, with the first floor as my workspace and the second as our living space. When Mike had gotten used to my home, "Dad said he'd give us $5,000 if we had a kid. So, Karen, let's get married," he proposed so casually. With almost no experience in love, I wondered if this was normal and accepted his proposal. Eventually, I became pregnant. Being pregnant at 40, there were many things I had to be careful about. As my long-running novel series was concluding, I decided to take a break from work for Mike and our baby. 2 years have passed since Jane was born. Jane, entering her terrible twos, started to cry and say no to everything. I saw it as part of her growth, trying everything possible to appease her. "Karen, Jane's being too loud, I can't sleep. Make her quiet, will you?" Mike appeared in the living room, saying so. It was just past 8 p.m. Mike said he had been out drinking with his company last night and went straight to work, hence his exhaustion. "Sorry, I think she'll settle down soon." While I had the urge to blame Mike for not coming home and instead going out drinking, calming Jane was my priority. If Jane settles down, Mike will be satisfied, too. "Must be nice for you, Karen, not working, just staying at home doing housework and childcare. Meanwhile, I'm slaving away every day." Saying so, Mike went back to the bedroom. Where he got that line, I don't know, but it's become Mike's recent catchphrase. I'm tired of hearing what sounds like a scripted line from a father who doesn't participate in parenting. When I got pregnant, Mike was overjoyed. "Yes! Karen, we did it!
Now he'll get $5,000.
As much as I didn't want to hear it, Mike immediately informed his parents about the pregnancy and seemed to have received the $5,000. He was as happy as if he'd been given a bonus, but one would think this money from the in-laws was meant as a congratulation. Normally, one would expect money like this to be spent on things for the child, like clothes or milk, but Mike didn't hesitate to put it straight into his pocket. Even so, I made sure to prepare a return gift for my in-laws with my own money and sent it. Mike, for better or worse, is naive and lacks common sense. Additionally, it seems he's significantly lacking the skill to consider others' feelings. The very first words he said when Jane was born were, "Too bad. She looks just like Karen. Poor kid." It's hard to believe these are words one would say about their newborn. Really, was Mike's initial goal just the $5,000 from the start? He just watched me struggle with childcare, like it was someone else's problem, saying, "Taking care of a baby is hard, huh?" And from then until today, Mike has shown no interest in childcare. One day, I absolutely had to meet with someone for work. Though I was on leave, the publisher had requested a meeting to prepare for my return. I was on the phone asking my parents to look after Jane. Mike, hearing this, said,
"Huh? Who's this NET meeting? Don't you think it's cruel to leave the kid and go somewhere? Terrible mom. The worst. This is what being an unfit mother is."
It was a harsh accusation. Even I couldn't help but retort to Mike's comment.
"Then, would you mind looking after Jane? I'm sure she'd rather be with Dad than go to my parents."
Mike blatantly grimaced at the suggestion.
"Are you kidding me? Why should I have to spend time with a kid? I'm busy. I don't have time to entertain a child."
Busy, probably just going to the casino. Disgusted by Mike's words, I decided to stick to my original plan and leave Jane with my parents. My parents live a bit far, so my dad would come by car to pick her up. However, because my dad always ends up drinking during the day, we have to go pick her up ourselves when it's time to bring her back. After finishing the meeting in the evening, I was getting ready to go pick up Jane. Unexpectedly, Mike showed up in the living room. Probably because he lost early at the casino and ran out of money. I said,
"Good timing. I'm about to go pick up Jane. Could you drive me?"
I thought the least he could do as a father was to help out. But, as expected, Mike's response was, "No. It's a hassle." Since I was expecting this, I was about to leave without feeling disappointed. Then, surprisingly, Mike said, "Fine, I'll drive." For a moment, I doubted my ears, but seeing Mike heading to the parking lot with the car keys, I felt for the first time that he might have some awareness as a father. I was filled with a small sense of joy, which shattered the moment we got in the car and closed the door.
"I'll drive, but give me $300.
Mike said, holding out his hand. So this was his real intention. My heart sank. Once in the car, I couldn't refuse. Jane was waiting at my parents' house. I had no choice but to hand over the $300.
"Thanks. Just a bit more and I would have one for sure. Leave it to me, I'll win."
He started the car almost as if he was about to hum a tune. Looking back, maybe it was a mistake to ask Mike to drive. We spent the ride in silence without much conversation. As we were a few miles from my parents' house, Mike's mobile phone rang. He picked it up and started checking the message that had arrived.
"Mike, that's dangerous. Stop the car and then check,"
I said, but Mike continued to look at his phone while driving.
"It's fine, I'm used to it,"
Mike said, even replying to the message. At that moment, I felt the car tilt slightly to the right.
Dangerous,
I thought, just as I saw the concrete barrier of the central reservation approaching. Mike hastily turned the wheel. The car stopped with a loud noise. I remember feeling the pressure of the airbag. Hearing sirens in the distance, my consciousness faded. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. I tried moving a bit. Ouch. A pain ran through my body like numbness. I honestly thought it was the end. When the car crashed into the central reservation. I wonder how Jane is doing. Is she safely at my parents' house? I hope Mike hasn't done anything strange. Speaking of which, what happened to Mike? As I was wondering, are you looking for your husband? A woman spoke to me. When I looked towards the voice, there was a woman in the hospital room.
You're the new contact from the publisher for today's meeting.
Yes, this woman was the new contact from the publishing house I met with today. Her name was Mary, if I remember correctly. Karen, your husband had only minor injuries, so after receiving treatment and tests, he went home. It's terrible, isn't it? Leaving the hospital without even showing his face in your room, especially with you in this condition. Mary seemed more frustrated than I was. It turns out she wanted to thank me for today's meeting and called me. But it was after the accident happened, so someone from the hospital explained the situation to her. I asked the hospital staff if they could tell me what happened to you. Even though you were barely conscious, you nodded vigorously. You're too dedicated to your work, Mary said with a laugh. Jane is safely being looked after at your parents' house, so please don't worry. Also, if you don't mind, could I help you while you're hospitalized? Knowing Mike was unreliable, Mary's offer was very much appreciated. But I also felt conflicted about being taken care of by someone else, like Mary. I really want to help. I'm your contact, after all. Encouraged by Mary's strong words, I decided to accept her help. With Mary's dedicated assistance, I was able to leave the hospital. However, I had severely injured my back, so I couldn't walk without pain and was forced to use a wheelchair for a while. Throughout my hospital stay, Mike never visited, only occasionally sending messages asking for money, like, "Send me $300. When it was time to leave the hospital, it was my father who took me home. I was also able to take Jane home with me. Given the circumstances, my parents said they could continue to look after Jane for a while longer. But I wanted to spend time with her too. Even when I said,
Mike is here, so it'll be fine.
My father seemed unsettled, as if sensing something was wrong. But without prying further, he just said, "Call me if you need anything," and left. Fortunately, my house was made barrier-free on the first floor, anticipating future living with my parents. Currently, it was used as my workspace, but since getting married and taking a break, I spent most of my time on the second floor. I had everything I needed to stay overnight on the first floor from when I used to work there extensively. The room on the first floor, less cluttered compared to the second, was spacious and safe for Jane to play in due to its barrier-free design. I managed to shift from the wheelchair to sit on the sofa. I could do this thanks to Mary's encouragement to actively participate in rehabilitation. Jane ran over to me as she saw me sitting on the sofa.
"Mom, does your leg hurt? Let me rub it for you,"
she said, gently stroking my leg. I couldn't help but hug Jane, feeling an overwhelming sense of love for her. How could Mike not cherish such a kind and lovely child? I'm truly grateful that Jane wasn't in the car with Mike during the accident. It's a relief that I was the only one seriously injured. I felt a surge of dark emotions towards Mike growing inside me. For my own sake, and more importantly for Jane's, I began to contemplate our future life without Mike. The day after I got discharged, Mike came to the first floor of our house. He had a band-aid on his forehead, probably from an injury during the accident. This was my house, too. I honestly thought it was a two-story apartment. Our house has separate entrances for the first and second floors, so his confusion was understandable. I had texted him about my discharge the day before, but wasn't it strange to him that I didn't return to the second floor? Probably not. He's always been indifferent to others. Looking at Mike with a bit of disdain, I noticed a young, unfamiliar woman behind him. She looked quite young. Probably in her early 20s. This is Emma. Young and cute, right? A big difference from you, Karen. Sorry to drop this on you suddenly, but I want you to move out of this house. I'm going to marry Emma. I was dumbfounded by such a sudden proposal. But the moment I saw this young woman, I had imagined the possibility. Then Mike began to speak something even more outrageous. If you think about it, I was driving because of your errand that day when we had the accident. So, I'm actually a victim here, caught up in this. You are the perpetrator. Maybe your injury is your own responsibility, but mine is totally undeserved. That's why I'm going to demand compensation from you. I was speechless. How could Mike come to such a conclusion? I wished I could peek inside his head. Besides, Emma is a nurse. Totally different from you, who's just a NET. She actually works and doesn't hesitate to spend money. She's the best woman, Mike said, pulling Emma closer. Seeing this, I felt no jealousy at all, just disgust. And then Mike said something unbelievable. Also, I'll be taking Jane. You get child support money when you have a child, right? Karen, that's sneaky. Keeping such a good deal to yourself. Turns out kids can be quite useful. You've been leaving Jane at your parents' house all this time, right? What a terrible mother. Now you're in a wheelchair too. I'm definitely going to get custody. If I weren't in a wheelchair, I might have raised my hand to Mike. That's how absurd his statement was. My fists clenched on my lap wouldn't stop trembling. Jane, sensing something, clung tightly to me. A useless partner who doesn't help with childcare deserves a divorce. And pay up $50,000 in compensation. Mike laughed loudly with Emma. I trembled with an anger I had never felt before. What does he think children are? I will never hand over Jane to such a man. He can keep running from reality, seeking the easier path, and being spoiled. The world won't bend to your wishes. Sorry to ruin your delusion of being in heaven, but I'll make sure you fall to hell. I will never forgive you. Ignoring the foolish couple laughing loudly, I pulled out a piece of paper from the chest of the work desk. Then I handed it to Mike.
Here you go. Divorce papers.
Mike was momentarily speechless, but soon laughed again. You're quick. As expected of you. Don't forget the $50,000. This man only ever talks about money. I sighed the deepest sigh of my life internally. All right, $50,000 it is. Just to clarify for the paperwork, this is for the accident I'm supposedly responsible for, and it's compensation money, right? Mike, happy about getting the money, nodded vigorously.
Exactly. It's your fault I got into the accident.
I spoke calmly, albeit with disbelief. Then I'll send the formal documents later. Make sure to sign the divorce papers. And Jane will stay with me. I won't give you custody. That's non-negotiable, I said, looking straight into Mike's eyes. Pressed by my determination, Mike conceded.
Fine, I'll give up on Jane. When I think about it, she's not even attached to me and isn't cute. I didn't mention it, but Emma is pregnant. So, we don't need Jane. I'll get another $5,000 from Dad.
Does he ever consider how his words might hurt Jane? Not wanting Jane to hear any more of Mike's harsh words, I encouraged her to go to the back room.
Really, is this what you want?
I asked Mike for a final confirmation. Of course, it's settled. Make sure to leave the house soon, Karen. And don't forget about the $50,000. Mike and Emma then returned to their room upstairs. I called Jane. She came to me immediately and clung tightly. Mom, will I always be with you? Jane looked up at me with uncertainty. I hugged her tightly to reassure her.
It's okay. We'll always be together.
I decided to stay at my parents' house with Jane for a while. I moved my work desk and all other furniture to another location. After a while, I received the signed compensation claim and divorce papers from Mike at my parents' house. He really is naively unaware of the world. That naivety was part of his charm that attracted me, but now there's not a shred of affection left. I can mercilessly drop him into hell. About a month after I left the house, I noticed the vibration of my mobile phone while I was taking a break from starting a new manuscript. I didn't notice because I was engrossed in my manuscript, but there were dozens of missed calls from Mike. I expected he would call eventually. Reluctantly, I answered the phone.
Hello? What's going on?
On the other end, I could hear Mike's voice, unusually panicked.
What's going on? Some company is here trying to take all the furniture and even saying they're going to demolish the house.
I couldn't help but burst into laughter, finding Mike's frantic voice too amusing.
Karen! Stop laughing and come here right now. I won't forgive you.
Mike hung up forcefully. He cut the call even though there was no guarantee I would answer again. Cutting the call himself when I hadn't promised to come over shows he truly doesn't think ahead, such a foolish man. However, I had to show Mike his own version of hell, so I decided to go to him. Jane is currently attending a childcare center. As I was pondering how to get there, the doorbell rang. It was Mary at the door. Karen, are you going somewhere? I explained the situation and told her I was going to see Mike. Then Mary said, If that's the case, Karen, let me accompany you. I'm sure I can be of help. She insisted on driving me to Mike's. During the drive, Mary shared some shocking truths about Mike. Understanding everything, I somewhat looked forward to meeting Mike. Arriving at the house, I found workers moving out the furniture with Mike in the midst of chaos. Upon spotting me, Mike rushed over.
What the hell is going on? Is this your doing? Fix it!
Despite his forceful demeanor, he went pale upon seeing Mary get out of the car. It's been a while, Mike. Mary revealed she was Mike's actual sister. A fact that surprised me when I heard it in the car. They were practically estranged, it seemed. Let's not have this discussion standing up, let's go inside, she suggested, and we moved into the first floor room. Mike, without uttering a word, just looked pale. Emma seemed puzzled by the situation. In the empty room, I decided to break the silence.
I'm going to have this house demolished. It's no longer needed by me. The furniture is being moved to a new house where I'll live with Jane and my parents,
I declared, prompting Mike to angrily respond.
Why? Emma and I are living here now. You can't just demolish it.
Emma nodded in agreement.
This is my house, built with my money,
I retorted, leaving Mike unsatisfied.
How could an NET like you afford to build a house? Stop lying.
Mary countered Mike's words.
Mike, you really know nothing. Karen might be modest, but she's a best-selling author who's had multiple works adapted into dramas and movies. She's far out of your league.
While best-selling might be an exaggeration, it's true that several of my works have been adapted.
But she wasn't writing while married to me, right? So she was still a NEET.
Mike's argument was off point, as usual. Mary was stunned, but continued speaking.
Have you been listening? Karen has written many works in the past. The more they sell, the more money she makes. That's called royalties.
Mike seemed not to understand.
Mike, income isn't just from salaries. I may not receive a salary, but I earn about $300,000 a year in royalties.
I revealed, stunning Mike. He thought he no longer needed me after finding a younger, cute nurse, but the revelation of a $300,000 annual income made him react strongly.
So, I get half of that in the divorce settlement, right? Awesome! That's $150,000 a year.
His simplicity left me speechless.
Mike, the royalties from my single day's publications won't be divided with you.
I informed him, leaving Mike dumbstruck. He should be thankful for even fantasizing about getting $150,000 for a moment. I decided to deliver the final blow.
This house is also exempt from property division since I built it when I was single. The furniture is the same. Mike just moved into the house I was living in, so you'll only keep what you bought yourself. We're divorced, and I won't let strangers live in my house, so please leave soon.
Mike once again wore a dissatisfied expression. He aggressively questioned where they were supposed to live then.
I don't know. You have $50,000, so you should be able to find a place to live quickly, right?
I said, causing Mike's expression to darken noticeably. The $50,000 is gone. I went on an overseas trip and played at the casino, and it quickly disappeared. Mike's habit of squandering money on gambling was typical of him. But there's absolutely no sympathy for such actions.
But your current wife is a nurse, right? That's good. A wife with a steady income,
I said with a laugh. Mike, brightening a bit, replied, Yeah, it's true.
Being a nurse, Emma has been a big help. I've quit my job, and she's been on paid leave this past month, right?
Emma's expression darkened at those words.
That woman isn't a nurse or anything of the sort.
Mary interjected.
Mike mentioned he got married again, so at Dad's request, I looked into Emma. You're unbelievable, Emma. Does Mike know everything?
Emma shook her head slightly.
You're a nurse, right? Making $4,000 a month, you said? Is that not true?
It seemed Mike had been deceived by Emma, ignorant and unaware of the world as he was. Though it feels a bit pitiful, it's his own fault.
It seems she did aspire to be a nurse, but apparently, she lost her temper during her training, injuring a patient. The family kindly didn't press charges, opting for a settlement instead, but you've not paid a dime and ran away, right? That's the worst.
Emma glared at Mary.
And lately, you've been frequenting nightclubs, I hear. You've racked up a significant amount of debt. And you're running from that too.
Hearing this, Mike's face went pale.
Nightclubs? Debt? Emma, you're out of money. Didn't you take out a loan from a financial service recently? Just because you happen to be out of cash? I became your guarantor thinking you were a nurse.
Emma retorted, as if justifying herself.
You're the one who started acting like you had money, Mike. If I knew you were broke, I wouldn't have married you.
It was a messy argument between the two of them. Both as bad as each other, yelling at each other loudly.
Excuse me for interrupting your argument, but
I cut into the couple's mudslinging.
since there seems to have been infidelity during the marriage, I'll be filing for compensation from both of you. Thank you in advance.
My words stopped their argument dead.
Also, I'd like my $50,000 back, please. The police reviewed the dashcam footage and confirmed Mike's reckless driving. I paid you $50,000 because you claimed it was my fault, but it wasn't, so please return it.
Mike's face contorted more and more. The sight of an adult on the verge of tears was something to behold.
By the way, don't even think about running away. Of course, I plan to relentlessly pursue you, but Mary has also kindly informed the patient's family from the settlement, the nightclub, and the financial institutions you owe money to about your whereabouts. Everyone was relieved to hear you've been found. How nice for you.
Mike's face said it was anything but nice. And then, Emma finally broke down crying. Only Emma's sobs echoed through the house, now emptied of all belongings.
Mike is on his 7th marriage with Emma,
Mary murmured while checking the manuscript. I nearly dropped my teacup in shock.
The $5,000 given by Dad each time someone got pregnant was ostensibly a celebration, but really, it was more like an apology to the women. Mike misunderstood it as getting $5,000 each time a child was conceived.
I hung my head, wondering how one could make such a misunderstanding. Mary had cut ties with Mike, unable to put up with his irresponsibility.
Sending Mike abroad was Dad's idea. He didn't cause trouble there due to supervision, but it's surprising he met Karen upon returning.
It was a hard-to-believe story, but apparently, Mike has 6 children, including Jane. After each divorce, his family cleaned up his messes, but Emma was the last straw. And Emma wasn't even pregnant. It was a lie to get the $5,000. Emma's social media showed her drinking, smoking, and even bungee jumping overseas.
Actually, Dad, myself, and even my husband are huge fans of Karen. So, when we heard Mike got married, we were really happy but also very worried. I'm sorry I didn't come forward as his sister immediately after the accident. I didn't want to be disliked. On behalf of Mike, I wanted to sincerely support Karen, hoping that being with Karen would change him for the better. But I ended up causing trouble, and for that, I am sorry.
I hugged Mary tightly as she apologized. Mike had such a wonderful family. I wished he had realized their value sooner.
Mom, you're so good at walking.
After a long period of rehabilitation, I could now walk slowly on my own. Mary still helps me with editing my work and takes care of things around me. Mike is now working off his debt under his father's supervision, alongside Emma. I'm living in a new duplex house, writing novels while living with my parents and Jane.
Mom, you're amazing. I love you.
Jane kissed me on the cheek. I hugged her tightly in return. I have my beloved job and dear Jane. This is my heaven. I couldn't possibly wish for more, feeling as content as I do now.